I guess we can close the files. We can close the temp details as well as we are not going to be looking for any others. I think those are going to be the three ones that we're going to be using right now. So not within the recipe, but within the recipe list. Let's start actually destructuring our props. That's going to be our first thing. And we know that we're passing in the recipes. So I'm going to say recipes. That's the prop name. And this is going to be from the props. So we're going to have this dot, and then we're going to have props. That's going to be our basic setup. Then after that, I would like to have my container. We're going to place everything again in our React fragment. So we know that the shortcut would be something along the lines of these angle brackets. Then I'm going to grab both divs and place it within my React fragment. I'm also going to add right away some class names for the div. Class name is going to be container, as well as padding top bottom will be 5. And what we're going to have next is going to be the title. And you know what? For this, we're going to have some kind of comment just so it makes a little bit more sense. And then within the row, we will going to have the actual class name with the column. So there within the row, there's going to be a div that's spanning 10 columns wide on extra small screen. It's always going to be in the center. Then starting from medium screen, this is going to be 6 columns wide. Then the text is always going to be in the center. Text is going to be uppercase, meaning capitalize. And we're also going to have a margin bottom of 3, which we already know is going to be 1 REMs. And you know what? Let's write here the heading 1 with text slanted class. Class name, text slanted. And let's write that on our recipe list. Recipe list, this should do. That should look fine. And you know what? Why don't we also test it out a little bit, our React tools, since we haven't used them in a little bit. For now, I'm just going to leave the recipe here. That's fine. But I would like to make the screen bigger. We will going to open up the inspect, meaning our Google developer tools. Then what do we have here in console? Well, it says class name for DOM element doesn't exist. Okay, so where is that one? Recipe list 12. Okay, where did I make that mistake? Class name 12. Yeah, well, right here. Let's save that. Let's see whether this is going to work. Yeah, so we have the recipe list. And now my idea would be going over to React tools. So I'm going to say React. And let's just gonna go over what we have in our array. And I'm going to make this bigger. And then what we have. So we have browser router. We don't care. So like I said, this was going to be our parent component. Then we'll have our routers. Then within the router, we're going to have the switch, of course. And then within the switch, we have the route of path of recipes. That's going to be one thing that we're going to have. And that's what we're interested in. So I'm going to say, okay, so we're looking for the recipes. Within the recipes, we have the actual recipes page, as well as we have a recipes list. And as I'm looking at the recipes list, this is the array that I'm getting. That's the information that's being passed from our temp data. And as I can see, this is going to be 3 objects. Again, image URL, and so on and so forth. And if we know that we're getting back the array, I know that I can just loop through that array. And as I'm looping through the array, I'm going to be displaying each and every time our recipe component. So why don't we try that? This is going to be our title. And then right after the title, let's write end of title. I guess that should do for the comments. And you know what? Here we're going to have another row. Within the row, we're going to have to access the JavaScript. And we're going to say, okay, so we are getting the recipes. That is our array that's coming from the props. And let's write recipes map. So we would like to map over it. And as we're going over this list, I would want to create a new one. So I would like to create a new array where the actual information is going to be stored not just as a JavaScript object. In fact, we're going to return the JSX. So I'm going to say for each and every recipe, as you're looping through this array, I would like to create a new JSX. And again, we have a few options. I can write here with a curly braces, but just remember you need to write return, or we can have the implicit one. And since this is going to be JSX, I'm just going to place the parentheses. Technically, you could have skipped that, but I will going to do it. I'm going to say, okay, I would want to return, and Yeah, I just told you to have curly braces for return, and then I'm typing return. So let's say recipe. That is gonna be my recipe. And as well as, you know what, right away, let me delete this because I've had some tutorials where I just leave this one here and then I keep looking for a mistake over and over again because obviously this is not going to have any kind of information that we're passing. So now I'd like to add the key. Remember, every time we had a list, we needed to use the recipe. And then in this case, this is going to be within the recipe and then recipe ID. Now let me show you how that is going to work. Again, we're going to go back to the temp list and then we have this publisher, then title, and then obviously this is our recipe ID. That's what I'm looking for. That's the reason why we're going to have two of them. And let me head over again to recipe list. Then we have recipe dot recipe, and the key value is going to be ID. Let me close the sidebar. Recipe underscore ID. That's going to be our ID. As well as I would like to pass everything that comes from the object within the recipe prop. So I'm going to say, okay, for this, there's going to be a recipe prop, and we're just going to pass all this information within the prop. Let's save that and let's see. Well, for now, I just have 3 recipes. This is the div, obviously, that we have created in recipe. But we know that the moment we're going to go to the recipe and we're going to add all the information that we're looking for, everything is going to look really well because at least for now, everything is working since we're passing already 3 items from the array. And I can see that I have 3 recipes. So at least to this point, everything is working really well.